Hello and welcome to Global Lens with me, Parikshit Luthra. We're discussing the Gaza peace plan and the release of hostages by the Hamas. Over the last 2 years of the Israel-Hamas war, we have seen 68,000 people being killed. Over 1.7 lakh people have been injured. Remember, 1,139 Israelis were killed on October 7, 2 years ago. That's when the Hamas had carried out an attack on Israel and more than 200 people had been taken hostage. Now, a declaration has been signed by 4 nations, and this has been coordinated by the US president. Will this bring lasting peace to the region? What about the two-state solution for Palestine? And what about the reconstruction of Gaza? Those are the questions we are now going to discuss over the course of the next 15 minutes. Joining us right now is Ambassador Reuven Azar, who is the Israeli ambassador to India. Ambassador Azar, thank you very much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you, how would you describe the situation in Gaza right now?
Well, there is a great opening, Parikshit, as a result of this plan that was adopted not just by 4 countries, but the entire international community. We have this plan in 2 phases. The first phase was just implemented, although not thoroughly. We are still waiting for Hamas to release the remaining of the murdered hostages. We still have 21 murdered hostages in the Gaza Strip, but there is movement. There is movement, and there is a ceasefire that we hope it will hold. I think that the Palestinians have a real chance here for having a better future. And the region has a better chance for peace. So we hope that Hamas sticks to the plan. The ideas there are very clear. They have to renounce power. They have to transfer power to a responsible authority, democratic authority. The international community has a role to play, not just in supporting, but also in supervising. And if that happens, Israel will withdraw. We want to have a situation in which we can go back to our lives. I think we deserve that. The Palestinians deserve that. And we hope it happens. Unfortunately, Parikshit, what we've seen in the last 2 days is that not only Hamas is not fully implementing the commitments, they're also using violence, killing their own people. You probably saw the videos of the atrocious killings in Gaza. And they don't seem to be willing to renounce power. So the international community, especially the Arab countries, have to put pressure on Hamas because we want to see peace succeeding.
Right. Completely understand. I would also like to ask you that when it comes to the release of hostages, the bodies of the remaining hostages, what's the larger complication that you're facing right now? How many more bodies do you expect to be released in the next few days?
Well, the commitment was to release all the hostages, the living and the murdered, the deceased hostages, within 72 hours. Unfortunately, it didn't happen in full. The living hostages have come back to their families to our great joy. However, only 7 out of the 28 murdered hostages have come back. So there is a gap that has to be filled, and we expect that gap to be filled as soon as possible. And if that happens, then we can continue implementing the program.
Right. I would also ask you about the condition of the hostages who have been released. Could you tell us about the kind of stories they had to share, the ordeal that they had to face over the last 2 years?
Well, that was a tremendous ordeal, Parikshit. Hostages were tortured. They were kept in completely inhumane conditions. You could see very clearly after the ceasefire started, Parikshit, that the only emaciated individuals were the hostages, not the Palestinian population. Despite all this fake news about starvation, you could see that the people celebrating the Gaza Strip, the ceasefire, weren't emaciated at all. And actually even the UN stated that they had 3 months stockpiled of food in the Gaza Strip. But unfortunately, what we heard from the hostages, from the survivors of this ordeal, is that some of them have been kept in cages, shackled for an entire year without seeing the light of the sun. tremendous stories, and now a process of healing begins. They were sent to hospitals in Israel to assess their condition. They were gradually, meeting their family members, their friends. This is going to be a very long process of healing that is not only physical but also psychological and mental.
When it comes to disarming the Hamas, do you think Israel will be able to achieve this time around? What about all the tunnels, all the hideouts of Hamas in Gaza? Do you think that ability to attack Israel has been eliminated?
People have to realize our resolve. I think that countries around the world have seen Israel's resolve to defend itself. We have managed to debilitate the entire effort, not only of Hamas, but all the other terrorist organizations, all the proxies of Iran, even Iran itself. We are not going to give up the mission of making sure that Hamas cannot rearm and regroup and attack again Israel in the future like it did on the 7th of October. And therefore, there are two paths here. There is the path, the diplomatic path, that fortunately we have international consensus around it. It requires a lot of diplomatic pressure on Hamas to disarm. But if that fails, we stand resolute to do it ourselves. And President Trump only yesterday has said very firmly that Hamas has to keep the commitment that it adopted in Sharm el-Sheikh, and if they don't do that, the consequences will be dire. We don't want to get back to war. We want to give peace a chance. We're going to do whatever we can in order to let diplomacy win, because this is what the area needs and this is what our people need, not only in Israel, but I think also Palestinians are waiting for that.
Ambassador, we would like to ask you that in the next few weeks, while the immediate priority is to get the bodies of the remaining hostages, but when it comes to putting a security structure in place, a political structure in place, what can we expect in the next few weeks?
Well, we have a lot of work ahead of us, Parikshit. The parties have to sit down and elaborate all these details. We expect that the countries that are involved, the mediators, the United States, Tony Blair, European countries will get to a formula that will allow us not only to support the humanitarian needs of the Gaza Strip, but also to plan the reconstruction. But that can be done if we see that we have a solid security foundation, that Hamas is being dismantled, that they move aside, that they allow to an alternative leadership of technocrats to come forward, a leadership that is committed to peace, that is committed to construction, and not go back to what we have seen before, that the international community gives aid, but Hamas sequestrates it in order to build a military machinery against Israel. I don't think that any country in the world now is prepared to participate in reconstruction if they see that Hamas stays there. They have to remove themselves from power, and if they don't, reconstruction won't happen.
When it comes to the reconstruction of Gaza, could you give us a sense of what's the cost going to be like? Who's going to bear the cost of reconstruction of Gaza?
Well, I've seen reports that are talking about dozens of billions of dollars. I think that the President of the United States was talking about a business model that creates opportunity. We've seen countries that are willing to participate. Many of the countries that participated in the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting are willing to involve themselves. But, Parikshit, as I said before, we have to make sure that this time this will hold, that we will create stability for the long term. Nobody is willing to engage themselves in assisting a situation that is perilous, that can bring us back to war, and therefore the principles that are included in the Trump plan are so important. We have to make sure that the security situation is solid and that terrorist organizations are removed from power.
My final question to you, Ambassador, would be about India. What can India do now in the reconstruction of Gaza, in ensuring peace in the region? What kind of a role would Israel like India now to play?
India has an increasing role in our region, Parikshit, because of its rise as a global power, because of the fact that it's the fastest growing economy in the world. It has a lot of stakes in our region, from providing workforce to doing trade to doing logistics. We only a few weeks back, we hosted here our finance minister that invited Indian companies to get involved in infrastructure projects in Israel. We're going to issue tenders for more than $200 billion in the next 10 years. And Gaza is also an opportunity. I think it's up to the Indian government to decide. We're going to engage in consultations with our Indian friends at the highest levels to see what the possibilities are.
Is the two-state solution even possible? Because many are saying the only solution to enduring peace in the region is a two-state solution.
Parikshit, the biggest setback to a Palestinian state was the 7th of October. Before the 7th of October, there was practically a state in the Gaza Strip. We withdrew from the Gaza Strip in order to give the Palestinians a chance to self-rule. And what they did with that, they sequestrated their future to try to destroy the state of Israel. So if we have a situation in the future in which that changes, in which you have a reformed Palestinian Authority that stops eulogizing terrorists, that educates for peace, we have a chance for a successful Palestinian self-rule. But you cannot put the carriage before the horses. All these attempts by some of the countries to recognize a Palestinian state that was actually seen by Hamas as a reward for the 7th of October, this is not realistic. We have to engage on a realistic path that creates a solid foundation for Palestinian self-rule that will hold, that will remove the option of war out of the dictionary, out of the equation. And for that, we need a lot of effort. We need an international community that stays engaged, not just in putting pressure on Israel, but mainly putting pressure on Hamas to renounce power in the Gaza Strip.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Reuven Azar, for joining us to speak about the road to peace in Gaza and Israel's perspective on the current and developing situation. On that note, we take a short break, but don't go anywhere. When we return on Global Lens, we get you an exclusive conversation with the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, Nicola Beer, on the next phase of EIB's investments, which are to the tune of 5,200 crores, and why this is important. That's coming up. India and the European Union have concluded 14 rounds of negotiations as far as the trade deal goes. They are hopeful and optimistic of concluding negotiations by the end of this year. But at the same time, the European Union continues to bet on India as an investment destination. Joining us right now is the Vice President of the EU Investment Bank, Nicola Beer. Nicola, thank you so much for being with us here on CNBC TV18. Let me begin by asking you, what do you feel about India at this juncture? What brings you to India?
Oh, India is a very important partner who really matters for the European Union. I mean, it's not just a relationship. It's really two huge democracies partnering up and caring for having a resilient, a prosperous, and also sustainable future for their people. I mean, if you take it, we all together, these two democracies, we are for about a quarter of GDP and also population worldwide. And you see this matters. This matters when it comes to access of markets, when it comes to electricity grids, when it comes to transport or clean energy. And for this, you can also see it in the numbers. We are active here since 1993. And in the last 20 years only, we invested more than 5.6 billion euros here in India. And especially transport, which is really directly delivering for people, is an important part on it. Right. India is even the hugest investment outside the European Union itself when it comes to transport.
All right. Let me also ask you, does the prospect of a EU-India trade deal make India an even better destination for the EU Investment Bank to invest in?
Yes, of course, because here the Indian state and the European Union are nailing down once more their common priorities. And of course, we as the financial arm of the European Union are then aligning with these priorities. Yes, we will continue in transport, but for example, I think that the interconnectivity, the question of the grids, but also the question of having clear water and water sanitation will become more important. And in the same part, the question also to have more innovation funded, whether this comes by public money or what we prefer also to crowd in private money, will become more important.
All right. So let me ask you about the total quantum of investments that you're announcing during this visit. What will be the total value?
The total value will be 5,200 Indian rupees crore. So this is a huge amount, but it is coming up with 4 different investments. 2 are on transport, metro lines in Pune and Nagpur. 1 is water projects in Uttarakhand, and 1 is a fund investment in the leading Indian infrastructure fund when it comes to green transition.
All right. So let me ask you about that fund. Could you tell us the fund house that you are tying up with? What will be the deal and what will it entail, and what will be the quantum of the fund that we're looking at?
This is the Edelweiss Fund, which is investing in infrastructure when it comes to the green transition. So this is about energy grids, for example, with renewable energy. And it's so important because it brings venture capital and equity to the private corporates, which then go and help the Indian society with this transition. This is about 60 million US dollars in a 300 million US dollars fund. So it's a huge part in it. And this is kickstarting the first round, which should be closed up to the end of the year.
All right. And what are you looking to do with this fund?
We want to see on the ground private investments in clean and climate relevant projects. So this is up to especially renewable energy, grids and related investments.
All right. So let me also ask you about the importance of the investment in water infrastructure in Uttarakhand. Tell us a bit about the project.
This is a project which will care for having water distribution, but also sanitation, so wastewater, collecting and treatment. And this brings then a lot of very important services to the citizens. So it's serving about 900,000 people in the Uttarakhand environment, and it is an investment of 191 million US dollar.
All right. And how are you looking to increase financial support for India's transport sector? This has been a priority area for decades. What happens now going forward?
I mean, we have so far already in 7 cities metro projects and also a suburban railway project in an additional city. But here now we have in Nagpur and in Pune further projects. In Nagpur, it's an extension of the existing metro line. And in Pune, it's a top-up for the project. So at least at the end, what this means is that you have more, which is important for people. And this more in public transport means that you have less CO2 emissions. This means less pollution, but you have a better access for the people, especially also including groups like women's, elderly people or handicapped people, so that they can really have access to work, to markets, or to education.
All right. I would also like to ask you, when we speak about the India Energy Transition Fund and your investments there, is it going to be made through the Edelweiss deal?
They are not connected because the metro investments and the projects is public driven. So the main investor here is the Indian state. What the fund wants to do is to break it down to smaller investments of private corporates. But if you want to have a coherent picture, you need to take them both on board. So have the big infrastructures with the backing of the state and other private investors, and you have the smaller ones, which normally you can reach better throughout a fund, because then you break it down in smaller projects.
Right. So just to break it down for our viewers, because there are a series of announcements that have been made by you, what does the EU Investment Bank aim to do with investments in India's Energy Transition Fund?
We want to help India to deliver on its aspirations, because India has a net zero a goal for 2070, and of course then you have to invest. And the fund, as well as the big investments in infrastructure, also in transport. I mean, it means then that you have a clean transport afterwards. So this is for your green transition as well as the fund investments. But the fund investment is focusing on corporates, while the public investments are focusing on the big infrastructures. Both in common will then bring climate adaptation here in India, green tech, green energy, green transport, which means that it is a better environment for the people, but the prosperity and the growth is also there. So you have a climate adapted growth.
All right. So I would also like to ask you, in terms of future investment prospects, which would be some of the top areas for you in India?
We would go align with the free trade agreement and also the joint communication. So this is, of course, continuing in transport, but there are new areas also to invest. Connectivity, also interregional connectivity is an important part when it comes to greens, as for example energy, but also water is a huge topic here in the area, and of course then innovation, because innovation is driving the future of the people, is changing the way how we live, act, and have jobs in the future time. So this all together, I think, is something which matters to India and matters for the European Union.
All right. Now, where would India be in terms of EU Investment Bank's overall capital allocation?
I already mentioned that so far we invested 5.6 billion euros, so this is a really huge amount. And in some of the sectors like transport, you are the main partner outside the European Union. And it is a little bit up to the further development of the relation, but I think that the free trade agreement will give it once more a push. So European Investment Bank really stands ready to look on the next projects. I know, for example, that the question of digitalization and AI, or also the question of green hydrogen, are very near also to the government's interest. So happy to look in concrete projects which will come forward.
All right. So are there conversations right now on both digitization, artificial intelligence, green hydrogen that are ongoing with the Indian government?
We have already discussion about green hydrogen, and with the upcoming joint communication, so the common roadmap, there I think will be a next emphasizing also of innovation and digitalization.
All right, Nicola Beer, thank you so much for being with us here on Global Lens, giving us your view on how the EU Investment Bank sees India right now, explaining us the importance of this 5,200 crore investment that you have announced during your visit, and what happens next in the months to come. Thanks once again for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
That's all we had time for here on Global Lens. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.